The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone.
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me. Do you think that you could repeat the question? And I listened more attentively. There must have been something in all of that nothing that wasn't quite so easy to see. And I must have missed something when you were just talking to me.
Alrighty. What do you think, Chrissy?
I think a lot,
Do you?
but not necessarily of like important things. I just think it looks like we're live.
Yep, I get everything shared. Everything's working well today for the first time ever.
Oh, thanks, Facebook. Not for long though. Not for long. Creator Studio is disappearing soon.
Is it really?
Yep.
And then what do we have to do?
I don't know. Meta business something or other. It's great. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Throws my whole job into a tizzy. It's fine. It's fine.
We gotta start exploring Rumble.
Rumble?
Yeah, they're
It's a weird dating app.
No, it's a video app.
It's a video.
It's like they're replacing YouTube.
Well, see, I thought that was meant to be Odyssey. Odyssey's been out for a while
Really?
now. Let's bring that music down.
Alrighty.
Yeah, Odyssey was meant to be like the next YouTube, and it's not. YouTube's still YouTube. So, yeah. Oh, here they come.
Still can't do it. 8 months later, and I still can't do
I'll
it.
carry the show. It's fine.
We're gonna have to. All right, let's thank our sponsors. Well, actually, let's start the show first.
Yes.
Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan here with the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi atop Two Guys Smoke Shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. I want to thank my fine producer, Chrissy, who is always doing a fantastic job. I've had a lot of producers in my lifetime of doing radio. I did radio for almost 30-something years, and most people who are called producers aren't really producers. They're board ops.
Board ops.
Chrissy's actually a producer, and so I want to thank you for the fine work that you do.
Thanks.
I also want to thank our sponsors. We love our sponsors. McLennan Real Estate, Century 21 on Broadway in Methuen. We love Matt. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago. Said, doesn't matter what the national trend is in the Merrimack Valley. If you're thinking of buying, if you're thinking of selling, you should still be doing it now. I want to thank Marsan and Son Construction. I know it's wintertime, but you might want to put on a little addition inside the house. You might need to fix something up. You want to give Ron Marsan and Son Construction a call. EIS, Investigation and Gun Training. If you're looking to get your gun permit, they'll walk you through all the process. They'll give you all the paperwork to fill out. And they also do security work. If you have a business and you're looking for security, give them a call. Borelli's Deli. Have you been to Borelli's Deli?
Look at me. Of course I've been to Borelli's Deli. Very good.
So I went to Borelli's last week after the show. It's my Thursday thing. I just wish they didn't close at 4. But I do rush there right after the show. And I got the marinated chicken, but it was marinated in sweet Asian chili sauce. And I said, that sounds like it could be either really good or really horrible, but let's try it. It was amazing.
Was it spicy at all?
It was very spicy, yeah. It
So
was,
even
it
though
was
it's
good.
sweet
But it was a
chili,
sweet spice, so it wasn't burning your mouth.
Okay.
So it was one of those like sweet.
I'm a big baby when it comes to spice. That sounds yummy, but I'm like, will my head explode when I eat
No,
that?
it's not too. It wasn't too spicy at all.
Okay.
Tomo and Shaken Seafood. I'm going to be at Tomo with my buddy Lenny Mirror right after the show.
Oh, we love Tomo.
He lost by 1 vote. Boy, the shenanigans in that race. He
1.
won by 100. Then they did a recount, and he won by 10. And then mysteriously, they found 6 votes.
And he lost by
They just mysteriously found 6 votes. He loses by 1 vote. And they said they've got this thing where they cure the ballot. We'll talk about it on another show.
Okay.
But I'm going to be meeting with him today to talk about the shenanigans in that race, and next week I'll have an update for you. Nice. That race is, by the way, going before the legislature. It's being appealed. So they are not coronating his opponent just yet. So by next week at this time, Lenny might have pulled off a win. But we're going to see what happens. Also, Clear Path for Veterans New England. They help homeless veterans. They sponsor the show, and they're great people. AFC Urgent Care, Pleasant Valley Landscaping, and a free shout-out to JG's Ice Cream, as well as Doug Mercurio from Peime Insurance Services, as well as Doug Mercurio, PC attorney at law, right, Doug?
Yes.
So thanks for coming in. You're now among a list of pretty distinguished businesses in the community.
Yeah, so I've heard.
We appreciate that for sure. And one of the things we encourage new advertisers and new sponsors is to do business with our other sponsors and our other advertisers. We're all kind of like a family. We all do business together. Yep. So if you could, if whatever you're doing for business at the law firm, if you could do business with anybody that advertises with us and tell them that that's why, that'd be really helpful for us.
Yeah, and I've known Matt McLennan for years.
Oh, really?
He's
Yeah.
a great guy, and he's also makes real estate fun.
Oh, yeah, he does.
You definitely
You watch his videos on Facebook?
I've seen the videos. I've gone, and we've shared a beverage or two.
Oh, good.
Granted, we each get our own because neither one of us share.
Right.
But that said, he's very good at what he does, but he also can enjoy himself and make it interesting.
There's a guy that
it's
really
always a
loves his
pleasure.
job.
Absolutely.
There's a guy that loves his job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And my father always used to tell me, if you love your job, you never work a day in your life. And Matt is the embodiment of that for sure.
I will tell you, when I worked for somebody else, when I just started out of law school, I programmed the number to the office in, and I called it work subconsciously. When I started my own practice, I called it office. It's funny when you work for yourself, it's a whole different mentality.
Yeah, it sure is.
Granted, you work harder than you ever did before, but it's not work anymore.
Right. So how long have you been a lawyer? How long have you?
So I've been in practice for about, I'd say, 19, this is 20 years coming up.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I know, I'm older than I look, apparently. But I've been doing this for 20 years, primarily handling real estate the entire time. So we do closings representing buyers, sellers, lenders. I do residential and commercial. I'm licensed as an attorney in Massachusetts. I also handle closings in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, you don't have to be licensed as an attorney. You need to be a title insurance producer, which I am.
Okay.
So I do a lot in both Mass and New Hampshire. Like I said, everything from, I've done, leased mobile homes on leased land, and I've done, $26 million transactions. So, and every, apartment buildings and everything in between.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I like to get professionals on all the time, can you give people advice on when they're looking for a lawyer, what not to look for and what to look for? Because a lot of people call my office and say, hey, listen, I got into an accident, or hey, I've got an insurance claim, or hey, I slipped somewhere. Do you know a lawyer? And I always refer them to people that advertise with us that I've used, but you're in the business. Can you give people advice on things to look for and not to look for?
Well, so it's tough because especially in the transactional type of business that I do, and for most lawyers, frankly, it's a once and done type relationship. So the client comes to you when they have a need. You satisfy the need, they don't need you anymore. It's not an ongoing relationship, although many clients actually are continuous clients for one reason or another. But so you don't really know what you're getting when you hire the lawyer. So I always say, first of all, word of mouth. Word of mouth for some people who have relationships, but not a popularity contest. Not, our kids play together, or our wives hang out, or we golf together, because they might be a great attorney or they might not be. So people who have dealt with them in practice, people who have been their clients. Most of my business comes from former clients, people in the business who have interacted with me. That's really the number one thing. I mean, client reviews are big. I mean, the internet is, famous for that. I will say there's hundreds of reviews out there for me. I've had clients who have Googled me and Googled other people they were talking to. And, the other guy might have been $100 cheaper, potentially. But after Googling it, they're like, yeah, I'll spend the extra $100.
Right.
So
I always say you get what you pay for.
Sometimes, and sometimes you just overpay for mediocrity. So just because something's expensive doesn't make it good. I try to be right there as far as value goes. There are certainly people who are going to be a few dollars cheaper. There are definitely people who are going to be a lot more expensive. But I think the quality that we deliver for the price that we charge is second to none.
So you do, you're a lawyer, but you also do insurance. Talk about the insurance business a little bit.
So I've been in practice.
Has the economy screwed you guys the way it screwed everybody else, or have you guys survived?
Well, it's funny. So that's all in air quotes, right? Because for years, I've been kind of connected with the insurance industry. In the law practice, we dealt with insurance on every transaction. And, you'd hear insurance guys talk about, oh, geez, the economy's killing me. And for them, if they have a bad year, they're off, 6%.
Right.
Where, I'm a real estate lawyer. When you have a bad year, you're off 80%.
Right.
So you kind of laugh at, their problems aren't really the same as my problems. But so we started the practice about 5 years ago, or the law practice I started about 18 years ago, 2005. The insurance agency I started about 5 years ago, 2018, because like I said, I've been kind of dabbling in that industry through the years. I understood it. And I work with a lot of real estate investors, and they need, quality insurance at a reasonable price. So what I did is I decided to set up an office. We started from scratch, which is very hard to do. We have 5 customer service reps who work in the insurance office. They're there quoting policies. Basically we have a number of companies we work with, probably about a dozen. And the companies I work with, I kind of selected for the type of clients we have. So, people who own a home, a couple cars, sometimes have investment properties. So we have really competitive companies. And when we put something to market, it's very hard for somebody to beat us. Any discounts that are available, we're going to give them, right? We're not trying to make an extra buck on every policy. We're trying to make it so the customer's happy and the policy stays there for 20 years. If
someone's looking for insurance, what is your advice for them? First, somebody that's never done it before, like I have somebody that handles my stuff, but if I lost that person, I would have no idea what to do.
Yeah, no, and what I would tell you is, first of all, use an independent agent or a brokerage like myself, okay? If you go to one company, they're going to sell you exactly one company's product. Sometimes that product's the right thing, sometimes it's not. They're not going to tell you, geez, we're a really bad fit for your insurance. You should call somebody else. Right. That just doesn't happen. Right. So they're going to try to sell you whatever their product is to sell. And I understand they're running a business. They're trying to make money. We have a number of companies. So if you walk into my office, we're going to find the company that's right for you. And I have clients that have kind of unique situations. And maybe the company we think is going to be best ends up not being best. So and by the way, it changes. So everybody's insurance, unfortunately, is going to go up this year, right? The companies weren't making much money. The election in Massachusetts, they held off increasing rates until after the election. Of
course, as always, right?
Which is kind of the way that goes. But now they're going to catch up with it. I mean, I think on average, people's insurance is probably going to go up about 10%, right? Which is a pretty big number. But we're also dealing with supply chain issues, cost to repair vehicles, cost to repair homes, the lack of labor out there to build homes or even do auto repairs. So they're paying more money. They're not making a ton of money. When they raise rates, it's literally just to break even and make a few bucks. But we're going to look and see the company that we thought might be the best fit might not be the best fit. So we have software that will sort through the companies that we work with, and then we'll go into that company system and finalize the quote to find the best coverage, mind you, because that's the important thing too. It's not just about money. The best coverage at the best price. So you definitely don't want to skimp because, insurance is like anything else. Until you need it, it's a complete waste of money. When you need it, you find out whether or not it's a complete waste of money. So I'd rather pay 100% and have what I need than pay 97% and come up short when you need it.
My friend Manny Gonzalez is a Lawrence firefighter, and he is always pushing for people to get rental insurance. Because if there's a fire, it's not covered. The owner... his insurance isn't going to cover what's inside your apartment.
Correct.
So if you've lost your furniture, your clothes, your computers, your TVs, any electronics, that's gone if there's a fire in your house. The insurance doesn't cover it. And he's always talking about how cheap it is. Can you talk about rental insurance?
It's very cheap. So I mean, I can't obviously quote rates off the top of my head. It depends, but I can say that I've issued renters policies for well under $200 a year. A year.
Wow.
I can also say that I've personally been in an apartment fire, and I was one of those guys who had, a lot of stuff that went away. The good news for me is my parents had an insurance policy. I was a student at the time, so I was covered under their policy. Excellent. Living away at school. And, they came out and they looked, actually they didn't even want to look at the stuff because it wasn't a huge amount, but they wrote me a check and they, allowed me to get back the stuff that I lost. It would have been a problem if that didn't happen. But certainly as an adult with other responsibilities and other bills, I was still a student. It was a little bit different. Whereas nowadays, if you lose your computer, that sometimes is people's way to make a living, right, or their way to connect with their friends. And they're not cheap. I mean, they've gotten cheaper, but they're not really giving them away for something decent. So coverage is very inexpensive for renters policies. And it also, you can have coverage for loss of use. So you need temporary housing. Well, that can be covered under the rentals policy. Liability, if somebody hurts themselves when when they're at your apartment. There's a number of things that can be covered, and it's not a lot of money. And it's really money well
$200 a year. I mean, I don't know how do you beat that.
It's pretty cheap. I mean, one of the first policies when I opened the agency 5 years ago, I wrote was a short money policy for, my brother when he was renting at the time. And he said, how the heck do you make money? And
Right.
it's like, we're not making a ton of money on renters policies. It's nickels and dimes.
Right.
But again, it's part of the relationship. It's, you end up, you do the cars, you do the renters policy, and over time people, buy houses, they have friends and family, and it's all, it all goes into the whole mix. But renters policies are very inexpensive. And from a landlord should insist upon it. How about that? Because if a tenant starts a fire, if a tenant creates a problem, the landlord doesn't want it to fall back on their insurance if they can help it.
Right.
So if they can go after the tenant's liability, it protects the landlord and it keeps their insurance affordable. Because if you have claims, obviously insurance companies don't like writing checks. They will.
Right.
That's if it's a legitimate claim, they're going to write a check. That's what they're obligated to do. But they're
going to fight you every step of the way.
Well, they'll rate you accordingly. So on renewal, you're going to pay a little more. You have a couple claims, 2-3 claims, they decide you're not somebody they want to insure anymore, and then it becomes a lot more expensive. So, there are, if landlords require tenants to have renters policies, it's a low-cost solution for a tenant. It's good for them. The landlords have the protection of if something happens that is the liability of the tenant, it doesn't hurt the landlord's policy potentially, depending on how they do it. And they're covered for the loss, which is key.
Oh, great. We're talking to Doug Mercurio from the law office of Doug Mercurio and also Peime Insurance Services. What should someone look for when they're trying to get insurance? Like, I know nothing about insurance. Again, I have someone that handles that.
Yep.
But if that person went away and I had to pick up the phone, I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, I would get talked into probably the biggest policy ever because they would just throw words at me and I'd say fine.
So honestly, I've seen that. But the other thing I see that's the problem is sometimes you get the cheapest policy possible. Because what happens is in order for things to be inexpensive, it has to cover less. Okay? I mean, in Massachusetts, let's talk about that predominantly. There's something called, there's liability, which in auto, for instance, auto policies, people have liability. If somebody sues you, it's what they can, collect before it impacts you personally. There's also things called uninsured and underinsured motorists. So if you get into an accident, if I get into an accident with you, you're at fault, but you don't have any insurance or you don't have much insurance, my own policy will pay me over and above what your policy limits are. So people skimp on that. It's inexpensive coverage, $12, $15, but I've seen people in the business who to be just a little bit cheaper, they cut back on that coverage. We have one, unfortunately, we had an insured recently die in a traffic accident, and he's going to, conceivably he should get a pretty sizable chunk of change from the uninsured or underinsured policy because of the other people involved. He wasn't at fault, and his estate will hopefully get a decent check, and that's what it's for. And if he didn't have that protection that cost him, like I said, $6, $8, $10, $12, if he didn't have that added protection, he would get whatever their limits were, and their limits weren't too high.
What are some of the things that people don't need that they get socked with?
So it's funny because one of the companies, which we won't name, is one of those only pay for what you need.
Right,
well,
yes.
That's kind of how that works, right? I mean, we're ordering off a menu. We can give people what they need and what they don't need. We don't sell them, right? I mean, for the most part, I've seen a number of things that people have coverage for beyond what they might actually need. It's kind of like, we'll use jewelry for an example, okay? If you have a $60,000 watch, and there are people that do, if they pay insurance based on a $60,000 watch, and that's the appraisal they get, they're paying that for years. If they have a claim, the insurance company will basically replace the item, or they'll give you the money needed to replace the item, or the diamond that falls out of the ring. Like, this does happen. So if you get a top dollar appraisal, you're paying based on what the appraisal says, but the claim is paid out based on the actual value and what it costs to replace it. And it's like anything else. When you buy your fiance an engagement ring, you get a really high appraisal to put on her father's insurance.
Right.
But then when you're paying for the insurance yourself, you're like, hey, what would it really cost to replace it, right? You're trying to impress him. You're not trying to impress your insurance agent.
Right.
So, bottom line is getting an appraisal for replacement value, not what they try to sell it for retail, but then sell it for 40% less. I see people overpay for that all the time. And, my feeling is, get the appraisal that you ask the person, not what would you put it in the window for, what would you actually sell it for?
Right. What's the replacement cost?
Right. What would it cost to replace it? And you want to be adequately insured, but to insure something for twice what it would really cost to replace doesn't do anything except run up your premium. And that's not what we're about. We're trying to give people the best value, make sure they have the coverage they need without, again, paying for excess.
Right. What are the most common insurance that people don't get that they should?
Well, renters is number one. The number of people who have renters policies is very, very low. And it's sad, especially considering the low cost. It's very low cost. If you have a loss, especially, honestly, if you're not a homeowner, if you don't have as many assets, losing what you have is a bigger deal, even if it's only $20,000 worth of stuff. And I don't say only in a disparaging way. It's very hard when you don't have anything to replace $20,000 worth of stuff. If somebody who's a multimillionaire loses $20,000, they'll fix it, right? It's less of a big deal. So I think renters policies are overlooked because people don't want to spend money they don't quote unquote have to. The reality is there's some money that's smart to spend and then save where you should that makes sense. But that is one of the policies people don't have. There's like I said, uninsured and underinsured motorists, people skimp. And again, the insured isn't skimping. The agent sometimes is skimping, or the person giving you the quote, because they're trying to just be $8 cheaper than the next guy. So I also get nervous with the do-it-yourself insurance online. Okay, you go online and a lizard tries to sell you a policy. The problem is they're depending on you to tell them what you need. And as you said, and you're a smart guy, you don't know where to start. You don't know what you need.
Right.
And they're not really giving you the suggestions. The relationship isn't there. An 800 number in a call center is not the same as an independent agent that you have an ongoing relationship with.
Right.
So, we have conversations. We get to know our clients. Umbrella policies for people who are, have some assets and they are a target. They could be sued if there's more to protect. Umbrella policies are cheap money. Couple $100 depending on the amount, a few $100s, and there are some that are $2,500 if they're more exposure. But that sort of coverage protects your assets, your personal assets, keeps them away from judgment creditors, really.
So you do law, you do insurance. What don't you do?
I don't tap dance. I tried it, didn't work. I don't have the figure for it. But no, I honestly limit what I do to what I do well. So I've been a real estate attorney, and I'll do some small business work. I'll work with people, primarily investors, people setting up small businesses. I handle the closings. I handle representing buyers, sellers, lenders, commercial. I don't do litigation. I don't do divorces. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the legal field I don't do. What I do is I tell clients who I would recommend.
Right.
To your point, right? Where do you find a lawyer? From somebody who knows what they're doing. And there's plenty of lawyers out there. Some are better than others. I have a really good network of people I've been comfortable referring clients to, and then I get feedback from the clients after it's over. And whether it's personal injury, there's all sorts of things that there are really specialties for. Can I write a will for you? Sure. Would I, depending on your situation? Maybe. But if you're high net worth, if you have other issues, I'm not going to do it. Right. I'm going to give you somebody.
To a specialist.
Somebody, exactly. Let people do what they do well. I won't do something if I don't think I can do it well. Right. That's why when I set up the insurance agency, it actually took about a year to get it lined up, because I wouldn't open the business if I couldn't effectively serve the client at a reasonable price with the right coverages. So I really wanted to do it right. And every day, honestly, we continue to improve. We've added another company, which isn't official yet, so I don't want to say it, but we're adding a pretty sizable company in the area that's also very competitive with my target demographic. So it'll be another good weapon, the arrow in the quiver, so to say. And which arrow you use depends on what you're trying to shoot. So
you do real estate, you do the legal stuff.
Yeah.
When COVID hit and we all got everybody got killed.
Yeah,
right?
What are you talking about? What's this COVID you're referring to? I don't think I've heard about it.
How did you survive? How do you survive in a business where, especially the legal business, where the courts are shut down, you can't see clients, nobody's beating each other up because everybody's locked in their house?
And we're old school in Massachusetts, so we they did pass eventually. They passed a temporary remote notarization law, which I honestly thought was horrible. We did not do one remote notarization. I was meeting people in person. I was wearing an N95 mask. At one point, I was wearing gloves. We did what we had to do to make sure the client's needs were met. At one point, we were doing closings outside. I mean, you kind of adapt. I mean, the world, we all dealt with this, right? We none of us knew how to respond to it, but then we figured it out. Now, in retrospect, some of the stuff we did was pretty stupid, right? But we were figuring it out.
Right,
I mean, the arrows on the floor in the supermarkets. I mean, I was famous for going the wrong way, and I made it the whole time without getting a ticket.
I remember this old lady screaming at me through her mask that I was going the wrong way at Market Basket. Yeah. And I breezed right past her. I didn't even want to talk to her. Like, lady, you're worried about getting COVID, and then you're coming and getting in my face.
Well, and actually the funny part is, right, and you know how it is, especially, I hate to say it, I'm a guy, right? A guy in a supermarket is just, I'm out of my element. I'm not there all the time. I don't know where everything is. So God knows it takes me 3 times the amount of time it would take my wife, because my wife knows where things are, and I'm trying to figure it out. Well, if you start telling me I need to go up one way, down another way, up one way, down another way, every time I make a mistake, it's taking me 3 times as long because I'm supposed to run the wrong way. And I'm like, you know what? If you spend 3 times as long in the supermarket, you're actually got 3 times the exposure as opposed to walking the wrong way. You know what? Guess what? You're still there for less time. And, again, we were figuring it out. I don't fault the supermarkets. They had to figure it out too. And we did manage to come up with ways that work. We now, when we send people closing packages, we used to just explain it all at the table. Now we send it to them secure in advance. We go through it all on the phone. And we wanted to minimize the in-person contact. We run through everything. They have a chance to ask any questions. And we basically make it so when they come in, they're literally just signing. There doesn't need to be an explanation because they've already gotten it. That was a response to COVID. We did that intentionally. Honestly, it works. And we're going to continue that forever, not because of COVID, but because people used to walk in, they didn't know what they were signing. They were uncomfortable at times. Usually they'd sign it, but they didn't always, they had questions that they wouldn't ask and things like that. So I'd rather people we explain it pretty thoroughly, but we're going to explain it up front. And then if you think of a question, you call me back, we answer the question. And when you come in, you ask the question. But we want to make sure it's a smooth transaction, and it makes the closing itself significantly smoother. So there are some things that actually changed our policies that we're going to hold on to even in the future.
So I've had a lot of people ask me, especially when I have Matt McLennan on, he zooms in sometimes, he comes in, and then I'll get an email.
You talk to him about Borelli's too, don't you?
Oh, yeah, we do. Yeah. and then I'll get a couple of emails from people saying, well, geez, I was just listening to Matt. If I want to sell my house, I'll go to Matt, but why would I need a real estate attorney? Why does somebody need a real estate attorney if they've got a real estate broker?
Well, we do 2 different things, okay? And I will answer the same question the other way. You should have a realtor even if you have a real estate attorney, okay? I don't do pricing. Like, I have no idea what your house is worth. Right. That's not what I do. I don't do the marketing. That's what somebody like Matt would do. Matt will go in. Matt will give you an assessment of value. He'll position your house to sell on the market based on the current circumstances of the market. That's what he does. Then when it comes time for the legal work, the contracts, that's not what he does. And it's somebody like me who comes in. If we're representing a seller, we'll draft the purchase and sale. The buyer will likely have an attorney. We'll negotiate with their attorney to make sure the agreement doesn't have exposure to the client post-closing. We try to minimize the liability, the risk, the exposure. That's what attorneys do, is manage risk. And actually, ironically, that's what insurance agencies do.
Right.
So we try to minimize risk in the transaction, whether it's liability, whether it's the likelihood of it closing. We want to make sure if my client wants it to close, we want to structure the deal so it's as likely to close as possible. I've had times that I've had clients who didn't want it to close. They wanted to get out of the deal, and we've done what we've needed to do whatever the client needed. Whatever the client's wishes are my wishes, right? I'm functionally their servant within reason. So whatever their goals are, it's my job to help them achieve them. So the attorney, makes sure that, again, we limit the risk, we limit the exposure, we make sure if there's problems with the deal, we can try to, an experienced attorney, I can avoid problems because I know what's coming around the corner because I've been there before.
Right.
And if we structure things properly, we avoid problems, things go better.
Well, that's great. We only have, is that true? Only 4 minutes left? It's just flying by today.
Time flies when you're having
We have
fun.
Doug Mercurio from Peime Insurance Services, and Doug M Mercurio, PC, which means you're an attorney. What is PC?
So it's actually the name of the company is the Law Office of Douglas M Mercurio, PC. The PC stands for Professional Corporation. That has nothing to do with me. It's the legal entity.
I gotcha.
So I'm called a number of things, and I am called PC every so often, but that is not what I'm normally.
Something I've never been called. I've never been called PC.
Yeah.
And you've got offices in North Andover and North Reading?
So the law firm is in North Reading. So that's where I have had the law firm for almost 20 years.
You're right near the Dairy Queen, right?
I am. I can look out my office window at Dairy Queen. I will tell you there are times in the summer when it's warm and you see the long line and I'm like, I forget it. There's no way.
Right.
And then that same day you'll see they'll have a lull.
Yeah.
And even if I don't want an ice cream,
you run across the street.
I want an ice cream,
yeah,
right? It's like there's no line. It's Dairy Queen and it's 90 degrees. I'm getting an ice cream. It hasn't done a lot for me, I will say, but every so often you got to treat yourself. It's just how often is the issue.
Right.
So the insurance office is a separate office with a separate staff. That's in North Andover, over kind of near Bertucci's, right behind that new urgent care place, right behind Bertucci's. So I'm from my offices, I can shoot down 125, and I'm 9 minutes away at any given time.
Yeah, no, you're very centrally located. Have you noticed, because you've been doing this, you said, for a number of years, have you noticed a change in the business, in the insurance business, in the legal business? Does it seem like it's getting harder?
Yeah, life in general seems to have gotten harder, right? Life has gotten harder for everybody. Business has gotten harder. I mean, we're in a state that's not the most business friendly. Mm-hmm. There's added regulations through the foreclosure crisis of 2007, 2008, which I was in business well before that. So it made things harder. It complicated things. Even the title problems we run into from time to time seem to be harder than they, sometimes in a tough market, you end up getting more of the harder stuff. And, granted, I love the easy stuff, don't get me wrong, but I can do the hard stuff. Generally, the climate has gotten harder. There's a lot more people out there that are great at marketing. Are they great attorneys? I don't know. That's up to you, and Google them and see their reviews. But bottom line is they're great about bringing in business. So from a competitive perspective, I have to contest with that. So again, if I was thinner, taller, and better looking, maybe I'd have more luck bringing in business. But ultimately, I've been pretty good. My clients are happy. And it's most of my business comes word of mouth.
Why don't you, we got about a minute left. Why don't you talk about your website, how people can get in touch with you if they want to do, like you said, you do wills, if you can. But really, you do real estate and insurance.
Yeah, real estate law is primarily what I do. So people buying, selling a house, lenders, residential, commercial. I don't do landlord-tenant, so I don't do evictions, not my thing. That's more litigation than real estate, even though it has to do with real estate.
You want to make money. You don't want to go to court.
Well, I've successfully avoided court. When you're a transactional attorney, that's a good thing. Right. I was in the land court as an expert witness on occasion, but I try to stay out of court.
Right.
So basically, people buying, selling houses, it's Law Office of Douglas M Mercurio, which is in North Reading. You can Google it. 978-276-3100 is the phone number. The website is decent, still probably needs to be brushed up, that's for sure, but it's mercuriolaw.com, mercuriolaw.com. The insurance agency, Peime Insurance Services in North Andover, 978-685-9999, and the best way to get somebody there is to email quotes, Quotes, at Prime Home and Auto, all spelled out, PRIMEHOMEANDAUTO.com. And that goes to everybody in the office, and somebody will get back to you, and you'll see what we can do. And usually it's better coverage, less money.
Fantastic. Attorney Doug Mercurio, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully we'll be able to share this out and get as many people as we kind of know who you are and try and drum up some business for you, and we'll have you back another time. You come, Mike, like to talk about just general stuff someday?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a lot of fun talking about general stuff.
All right,
absolutely.
Okay. We'll have him come on and talk about politics or Joe Biden or something in the future. Maybe something will go. Where do you live? Do you live in North Andover?
I live in Andover.
Oh, you're in Andover, so a very political town.
Yeah,
I follow a lot of the politics.
There's a lot of headbutting between friends in Andover because we don't always agree.
Right.
But that said, it's a very good town, family community. With I will say, an even split, let's
Right.
just say, of people on both sides of the aisle.
All right. Doug, thanks for coming in. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank our sponsors. We can roll up Mel. Oh, before we go, I want to thank Dawn's Sign Tech in North Andover. I don't know if you've seen these things online. Look, I can hold it in my hand. You know what this is? This is a sleeping bag. And she donated 20 of these for the homeless. And they're these, I don't even know like what to call them, but they, if it's 2 degrees below zero and you put it on, it's going to keep you warm no matter like how cold it gets outside. It's like a thermal fire blanket. It's like you can also use it for the lining of your sleeping bag. So we've given them to the homeless. We gave them a bunch last night. It's waterproof. So some of the homeless have been using them for like when it rains, they put it down on the ground so that their sleeping bag's not on the ground getting wet and seeping in, then you can't sleep in it. So I want to thank Dawn at Dawn Sign Tech. We gave them to some of the homeless that we deal with on a regular basis to get some feedback from them. And Dawn says if they come back and say that they're good and they last long term, she'll buy us 100 and she'll fund these for the homeless. So I want to thank Dawn at Dawn Sign Tech in North Andover. Also want to thank McLennan Real Estate, our sponsors, Century 21, Marsan & Son Construction, EIS, Investigation and Gun Trading, Borelli's Deli, Tomo and Shaken Seafood. You got to get the Emperor's Delight Deluxe if you go to Tomo's. Clear Path for Veterans New England, AFC Urgent Care. We love Lisa. Hopefully we'll get her back next week. And a free shout-out to Pleasant Valley Landscaping and a free shout-out to JG's Ice Cream right across the street here from the studio. Doug, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it again.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully we'll have you back. Good luck with the Valley Patriot. And the Valley Patriot is being delivered as we speak, by the way. So the new one is on the streets most places, but there are some places they're still getting out. I know I got Dan Salinas is out there today doing. Thank you, Chrissy, for a fine job. What are we doing next week? Do we even know? We have no clue.
No.
No, we should make it up as we go along.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
We're good at that.
Fair enough. Next week, I will have an update for you on the Lawrence police situation. I will also have an update for you on the Methuen deputy police chief situation, and the Lenny Mira winning by 100, losing by 1 vote. Melvin Taylor says you got to go home, so go home already.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.